On the family dinner, I was about to sign over a $470,000 apartment to my son's name as a wedding gift. But when his future wife cut me off mid-sentence and told me to stay out of their life and keep proper boundaries, so I calmly smiled and called my realtor instead. "Cancel that house transfer," I said right in front of them. "Show me that waterfront penthouse downtown, full payment cash. The deed goes in my name only." I am still processing all of this as I tell you. I wonder if any of you watching have been through something similar. Please let me know where you are from in the comments. Sometimes it helps to know I am not alone in this. If my story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe. Now let me walk you through what happened. The air conditioning in the private dining room was running too high, sending cold air down my neck and raising goosebumps along my skin. The dishes on the table were still steaming hot from the most expensive private restaurant in the city, where a single steamed fish cost well over $100. I had carefully chosen this place to celebrate my son Richard and his girlfriend Sarah settling on their wedding date. On my plate sat a small pile of fish bones, carefully picked out as I prepared perfect portions of fish for them both. Richard ate without a second thought, while Sarah offered only a quick "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson." The mood had been warm, even happy, until I brought up the details of renovating their future home. About that 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom place we looked at. I was thinking we could leave the south, facing guest room empty for now. Use imported eco-friendly materials for the walls. That way when you have children, the room will be completely safe and non-toxic, Mrs. Johnson. Sarah's voice cut through my words like a knife. She delicately dabbed her perfectly applied mauve lipstick with her napkin, then set down her chopsticks with a sharp little clink that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. She raised her eyes to meet mine. Those carefully outlined eyes no longer held their previous sweetness, only a cold, calculating look. "We have no immediate plans for children." Her voice was flat, emotionless, yet it hit me like ice thrown into boiling oil. "Besides, decorating is our decision. We have our own ideas and preferences." My smile froze on my face. "I was just suggesting more eco-friendly materials better for your health. Mrs. Johnson, please don't interfere too much in our lives." She paused, then added another line that cut through me like ice. "And please maintain proper boundaries." My heart sank like a stone. She paused, as if the impact wasn't sufficient, then continued with each word pronounced with crystal clarity, as though she were lecturing me. "And please, maintain proper boundaries." Instinctively, I turned to look at my only son, Richard. I hoped he would say something, anything, even just to smooth things over with a simple "Sarah, don't talk like that. Mom means well." But he remained silent. He just stared down at the piece of fish I had carefully deboned for him, using his chopsticks to mash it into tiny fragments. The silence was deafening. It was consent. It was choosing sides. It was him handing his girlfriend a knife to slowly slice away at his own mother. In that moment, I felt like the biggest fool alive. Here I was, 52 years old, widowed young, having raised him single-handedly through all the struggles. I never remarried, fearing he might suffer from having a stepfather. I saved every penny, giving him the best of everything. After retirement, I had gathered all my savings, even planned to sell our family home, scraping together exactly $470,000 so he could marry with dignity, without the burden of a mortgage, so his life could be easier. I thought I had paved a golden road for his future. Instead, in his eyes and his woman's eyes, I was nothing more than a problem who didn't understand boundaries and was trying to invade their lives. A sharp, searing pain exploded from my chest, spreading quickly to every limb until I felt almost numb with cold. But I didn't shiver. Instead, I smiled. Under their astonished gazes, I slowly forced a smile from between my teeth, one so painful that my eyes began to sting. I reached for my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers slid across the screen to find that familiar number, and I calmly pressed dial. The call connected quickly. "Hello, James," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "Mrs. Johnson, how are you?" Have you made a decision about the wedding house? I've already spoken with the owner. You can come sign the contract any time. The young agent's voice bubbled with enthusiasm. I glanced at the two frozen faces across from me, my smile deepening. Actually, James, about that wedding house we discussed, I won't be needing it anymore. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, is there something you are not satisfied with? That property is really in high demand. Nothing wrong with it at all, I interrupted, my voice quiet but clear enough for everyone in the room to hear perfectly. Please show me something different. That waterfront penthouse at Riverside Tower you mentioned before, full payment. The deed goes in my name only. As these words left my mouth, I watched my son Richard, who had been studiously avoiding eye contact, suddenly snap his head up, his young face written with disbelief and panic. Sarah's face drained of all color instantly, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide her shock and confusion. She probably never imagined that I, whom she saw as a traditional mother, would make such a rebellious decision. Wonderful, wonderful, Mrs. Johnson. I'll contact them right away. The agent's voice cracked with excitement. I hung up the phone with a simple, Standing up, I took my coat from the chair back and put it on with deliberate calm. Throughout this entire process, I didn't glance at them even once. Please, take your time finishing. I've already settled the bill. I'll be going now. No arguments, no accusations. My movements were swift and decisive, as if I were handling a business transaction that had nothing whatsoever to do with me. I opened the private room door and walked out without looking back. As the door slowly closed behind me, I clearly heard the crash of breaking porcelain inside, followed by Sarah's suddenly uncontrolled, shrill voice. Richard, what does your mother think she is doing? I leaned against the cold wall outside the door, taking a deep breath of the corridor air that mixed the restaurant's aromatherapy with food scents. There was no anticipated sadness, no tears, only an unprecedented sense of liberation, as if I had finally removed heavy shackles that had weighed me down for decades. I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a 5-star hotel in the city center. I had barely finished my shower when my phone began vibrating frantically on the nightstand. The screen displayed Richard. I watched it ring again and again until it automatically disconnected. Sure enough, within 30 seconds the phone rang again with stubborn persistence. I calmly finished drying my hair before answering. Hello, Mom, what got into you today? Do you know Sarah has been crying because of you? My son's voice was filled with suppressed anger and accusation. No concern. No, did you get home safely? Just immediate blame. Whatever remaining warmth I felt completely evaporated. She was crying. I laughed softly. She has the nerve to cry when she was stabbing me in the heart. I didn't see her hand trembling. What do you mean stabbing you in the heart? Sarah speaks directly, but she is young with modern ideas. She told me she just wants you to have your own life, not make us the center of your universe. She is thinking of your well-being. Why are you being so sensitive? My well-being. I was shaking with fury. I emptied my savings, gave you $470,000 for a wedding house, and all I get is her lecture about boundaries. And that is for my well-being, Richard. You tell me, without my $470,000, what would you marry with thin air? Silence on the other end, then his stammering voice. That money was for our wedding anyway, wasn't it? You already promised. You can't just take it back because Sarah said something. That is not fair. You can't control us like this. I heard clearly that during his pauses, Sarah was sobbing softly in the background, interjecting things like, tell her this is emotional blackmail, and make her understand, we're not her property. My son, my adult son, was like a puppet being controlled by the woman beside him, coming to condemn the mother who gave birth to and raised him. Disappointment, crushing disappointment washed over me like a tide. I didn't have the energy to say another word. Richard, you've grown up. I said these words calmly and hung up. The world went quiet. But within minutes, my phone lit up again. A WeChat friend request from Sarah, with the message, Mrs. Johnson, I'd like to explain. I accepted the request. The next second, a lengthy essay of at least 800 words appeared, titled, "On Modern Mother-in-Law Relationships and Boundary Setting." I skimmed through it quickly. The entire piece was filled with seemingly rational, objective, neutral analysis. It analyzed how mothers like me who experienced single parenting develop excessive emotional dependence and control issues toward their sons due to emotional emptiness. It analyzed how my giving personality was essentially a form of emotional manipulation that would make children feel suffocated. She earnestly suggested that I should learn to find my own focus in life, develop my own interests and hobbies, rather than placing all my hopes on my son. She even thoughtfully included a screenshot of a psychology article she had found somewhere, titled, "Learning to Exit Gracefully, a Required Course for Every Mother." At the end of her essay, she concluded, "Mrs. Johnson, these words might be hard to hear, but they're all for the future of our new family. I hope you can understand and achieve personal growth. Richard and I both want to see an independent, happy you." Looking at this condescending manifesto that treated me like a wayward child, I nearly laughed with rage. What did she think she was? A woman who hadn't even married into the family yet, but was already eyeing all my assets, now transforming herself into my life coach. She wanted to completely kick me out of my son's world so she could monopolize everything I had worked so hard to prepare for them. What a brilliant scheme. I stared at that line about hoping you can achieve personal growth and smiled coldly. Then I typed 2 words and sent them, "Received." Next, I took a screenshot of our entire chat history, including her serene social media profile picture. I opened my social media feed, edited a post, and shared it with the caption, "Today's educational material for all parents to reflect upon." I didn't block anyone from seeing it. This post exploded like a bomb in my social circle. Relatives, friends, and former colleagues flooded me with calls and messages. "Linda, what happened? Who is this person? How rude. Doesn't Richard have any sense?" I didn't respond to any of them. I simply quietly found Richard and Sarah's contact information and deleted them both. Then I blocked their phone numbers. The world finally became completely peaceful. I went into the bathroom and ran myself a hot bath, adding essential oil bath salts and applying an expensive seaweed face mask. The warm water enveloped my body, and my tense nerves gradually relaxed. In the mirror, I saw my face, no longer young but still well-maintained. Yes, I was only 52 years old, retired from a good government job, healthy, with money and time. Why should my life be held hostage by the phrase, "You are his mother"? Why should I exhaust the rest of my life's light and warmth for an ungrateful son and a scheming woman? My money I could spend however I wanted. My life I could live however I chose. From today forward, Linda Williams would live for herself. Early the next morning, I met with James, my real estate agent, at a coffee shop. He had clearly recovered from last night's shock and looked at me with barely concealed admiration and curiosity. "Mrs. Johnson, are you certain? The Riverside Tower unit isn't cheap. 2,800 square feet for $470,000. He carefully confirmed my decision. "That is exactly why I have this money," I replied calmly. Sipping my coffee, he asked no more questions and immediately pulled out the purchase contract. We signed the papers and processed the payment. When the credit card machine printed out that long receipt, I felt no regret whatsoever. I only felt that this money was more worthwhile than it had ever been before. "Congratulations, Mrs. Johnson. Here are your purchase contract and receipt. I'll notify you the moment the deed is ready." James beamed with joy. I took the document folder, feeling for the first time a tangible sense of control. This wasn't for my son, wasn't for my future daughter-in-law. This was Linda Williams' house, and hers alone. Leaving the hotel, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I walked into luxury boutiques I had only browsed before and bought myself the latest designer handbag and matching shoes. When I swiped my card, I didn't even blink. The consumer desires I had suppressed for half my lifetime were finally completely unleashed. Next, I booked a full treatment package at the city's most exclusive spa. As the therapist's soft hands worked on my back, with soothing music in my ears and the fragrance of essential oils filling the air, I felt every pore in my body opening, as if years of accumulated fatigue and grievances were flowing out with my sweat. Meanwhile, Richard and Sarah's world had descended into complete chaos. When they discovered their calls wouldn't go through and their social media messages were blocked, they panicked completely. Their original plan had been to get the house, then immediately get married and use my money for a lavish wedding. They had even picked out invitation designs. Now, everything had turned to vapor. I later heard from my sister that Sarah's parents, an extremely status-conscious working-class couple, called to berate Sarah mercilessly when they learned the wedding house had flown away. "How could you mess this up? You couldn't handle such a simple thing. You let a sure thing slip right through your fingers. I told you to sweet-talk your future mother-in-law. Why were you talking to her about boundaries when she was giving you money? Why didn't you mention money has boundaries too?" After being scolded by her parents, Sarah naturally took out all her frustrations on Richard. "Richard, you are useless. Your mother walked all over me and you didn't dare say a word. Now the house is gone. How am I supposed to explain this to my parents? Are we getting married or not?" The fighting was intense and relentless. From my sister's vivid descriptions, I could imagine their completely disheveled situation. I felt absolutely nothing, and even wanted to laugh a little. This was the independence you wanted. This was the life for two you were pursuing? Without my interference, your days didn't seem to have gotten any better at all. In the following days, I fully embraced my queen lifestyle. I hired the city's best interior designer to renovate my waterfront penthouse. I threw out all the previous plans that had been designed for the young couple. Without the mandatory children's room, I converted the brightest guest room into my art studio. Without needing to consider young people's preferences for modern minimalism, I chose my favorite sophisticated new traditional American style. I personally visited furniture showrooms, buying the ebony tea table I had admired for so long despite its high price, and ordered a custom-built bookcase wall in rich mahogany. Watching the house transform under my direction, bit by bit into the home of my dreams, gave me a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that nothing else could match. I also enrolled in oil painting and tea ceremony classes at our district's continuing education center for retirees. In painting class, I met many like-minded friends. We went on nature sketching trips together and discussed Van Gogh and Monet. My life suddenly became rich and colorful, no longer revolving around my son and daily household concerns. During this period, Richard tried to contact me through various relatives, from my mother to my sister to his distant cousin. They took turns calling with essentially the same script. "Linda, the boy is young and doesn't understand. Don't hold it against. Richard knows he was wrong. You have to give him a chance. If you don't want to buy the house, fine, but you can't disown your son." I responded to all of them with the same line: "I am doing very well. Please don't disturb me. I am enjoying my retirement." Then I would hang up. After a few attempts, the relatives also gave up trying. They probably thought I had lost my mind or was throwing a tantrum. Only I knew that I had never been more clear-headed and determined. A month later, there was a knock at my hotel room door. Thinking it was housekeeping, I opened it to find two faces I least wanted to see: Richard and Sarah. Richard looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his chin, and a wrinkled shirt. Beside him, Sarah was still impeccably groomed, though her face wore a carefully crafted expression of pitiful vulnerability instead of her previous arrogance. "Mrs. Johnson," she began timidly, her eyes immediately welling up with tears. "We know we were wrong. Please don't hold it against us kids, okay?" As she spoke, she tugged at Richard's arm. Richard seemed to suddenly remember his role and stepped forward, blocking my doorway. He looked at me, his lips moving for a long moment before he finally spoke. "Mom, our rental lease is almost up." My heart jumped, not from softening but from the entitled logic revealed in that statement. He continued, "Your new place is so big. And you can't use all that space anyway. So could you let us move in? Sarah promises she'll listen to everything you say from now on. Before I could respond, Sarah nodded eagerly like a pecking chicken. Yes, Mrs. Johnson. We don't need our names on the deed. We just want to live there. Richard is your only son. Won't everything you have be his eventually anyway? Won't everything you have be his eventually anyway? Those words struck me like thunder. I looked at them, one haggard and desperate, the other smooth-talking and manipulative, yet both operating from the same predatory logic. They had absolutely no understanding of what they had done wrong. They weren't here because they felt guilty about hurting me as a mother. They were here because their rent was due, because they had lost that $470,000 property, because I had personally severed their path to an easy life. They were here to demand, to beg, to continue feeding off me. I was completely enraged by their bone-deep sense of entitlement. A towering fury rose from my chest straight to the top of my head, making my blood boil. I stared at them intently, my facial muscles twitching slightly with anger. I didn't soften as they expected, nor did I explode in anger. Richard froze, instinctively answered, Isn't it your savings? Savings? I let out a harsh, cold laugh. I turned and went into the room, pulling out the document I had prepared long ago, and throwing it in Richard's face. The papers scattered across the floor with a rustling sound. See for yourself. I pointed at the documents on the floor, my voice trembling with emotion. That is the sale contract for our family home, to give you that damn wedding house with full payment. I sold the house I'd lived in for most of my life, the last memento your father left for us both. I am a government retiree. How much is my monthly pension? Where was I supposed to magically produce $470,000? I sold my only home, my only roots. Richard's face turned deathly pale. He stumbled down to pick up the contract with shaking hands. When he saw the familiar address and that glaring sale price, his body swayed as if he might collapse. Mom, I didn't know, I thought. I thought it was just your savings. His voice was filled with disbelief and panic. My tears finally broke through at that moment. I had planned that after you moved into the new house, I would keep the smallest maid's room for myself. With these old bones still able to move, I thought I could help you with the grandchildren, cook for you, make your lives easier. I had planned everything around you. My retirement money, my home, every remaining moment of my life. And what did I get? Your casual comment about boundaries was supposed to do what to me? After I sold my only house and emptied all my savings, did you want me swept out the door to wander the streets homeless? Each of my words hit Richard like a sledgehammer. His face had lost all color, his lips trembling, unable to speak a single word. Beside him, Sarah had also turned pale. She clearly hadn't expected the $470,000 to come at such a heavy price. She certainly hadn't imagined that I, the troublesome mother-in-law she was eager to get rid of, had originally planned to live with them. I clearly caught a flash of relief and lingering fear across her panicked face. She was relieved. She was grateful that she had preemptively said that word, boundaries. Grateful that she had nipped this massive threat of cohabitation in the bud. In that instant, the last tiny bit of warmth and compassion I held for them both was completely extinguished. I wiped away my tears and looked at them with eyes as cold as ice. Now, I've sold the house. The money is in my hands. The new house is in Linda Williams' name alone. Both of you, get out. In the end, I didn't make them leave too harshly. I pulled $200 from my wallet and threw it at their feet. This is the last money I am ever giving you. Take it and find somewhere to live. After this, don't come looking for me again. I slammed the door shut. Outside, I could hear Richard's heartbroken wailing and Sarah's shrill curses. I ignored them all. I changed hotels and blocked every relative who might reveal my whereabouts. 2 months later, my waterfront penthouse was finally finished. I moved in on a day when the sunlight was perfect. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows on the 28th floor, looking down at the winding river and the bustling city below, I felt my spirit expanding with the view. I began seriously cultivating my retirement life. Every morning, I walked. Every evening, I painted in my art studio. I started growing flowers, turning my spacious balcony into a small garden. My days were peaceful and fulfilling. It was while tending my precious orchids in the community garden that I met my neighbor, Professor Chen. Professor Chen lived across the hall, a distinguished retired university professor who had taught classical literature. His wife had also passed away some years ago, and his children lived overseas. He also lived alone. We bonded over our shared love of gardening, then discovered we had remarkably similar interests and hobbies. He enjoyed tea, and I was studying tea ceremony. He appreciated my paintings, saying they possessed a vibrant life force. I admired his scholarship, listening to him discuss Li Bai and Du Fu, Su Shi and Xin Qiji, always feeling that time flew by. We became friends who occasionally walked by the river together and shared afternoon tea. It was a comfortable, respectful relationship between genteel adults. I sometimes photographed my artwork or my carefully arranged balcony afternoon teas and posted them on social media. I set privacy controls, only sharing with trusted friends and new acquaintances I could trust. The improvement in my quality of life was visible. My close friends all said I looked 10 years younger, glowing with vitality. I never expected these photos to somehow reach Richard's eyes, probably through some distant relative we both knew whom I had forgotten to block. That afternoon, I was at the downstairs coffee shop with Professor Chen discussing a book when an unknown number called. I answered to hear Richard's voice. Strained and sour, "Mom, who is that man in your social media posts?" I was momentarily confused before realizing what he meant. Before I could respond, he urgently added, "You are out there alone. Don't let yourself be deceived. There are so many scammers targeting elderly women these days." His tone carried that interrogative quality of "I am doing this for your own good." I suddenly found it rather amusing. Back when I worried about his life, he told me to respect boundaries. Now that I had my own life, he was jumping out to point fingers again. "My friends are none of your business," I replied coolly. "If you have time to worry about my private life, you'd better think about where next month's rent is coming from." I hung up immediately. This was the first time in his life that he clearly sensed my world no longer revolved around him alone. He was no longer the center of my universe. I could imagine his shocked and deflated expression on the other end of the line. I felt no satisfaction, only indifference. Before long, Sarah had also somehow seen my photos. She was even more anxious than Richard. My sister later secretly told me that Sarah had incited Richard. "Look at your mother. She has already found an old man. That house definitely won't be yours anymore. You need to do something fast. You need to make her understand that you are her son. Everything she has should be yours." Listening to these reports, I found them both pitiful and ridiculous. They were like two mice eyeing a piece of cheese, frantically circling and even starting to attack each other because the cheese had moved. Their relationship, because of my withdrawal, because of endless suspicion and financial pressure, was developing larger and larger cracks. This was exactly what I wanted. Some growth must be accompanied by severe pain. I underestimated Sarah's shamelessness and desperation. When she discovered that inciting Richard to reclaim the property was hopeless, she became desperate and chose the most despicable method, spreading rumors. She started in our hometown relatives group chat. I had already left that group, but the messages always found their way to my ears through various channels. She first pretended to cry and complain about how heartless this mother-in-law, was, abandoning my biological son over one careless comment. Then she began adding inflammatory suggestions. "Mrs. Johnson has been quite lonely, widowed for so many years. Now suddenly there is a man around her, and we younger folks worry she is being deceived. That man looks quite sophisticated. Who knows what he is after? Especially since Mrs. Johnson just sold her old house and has a large sum of money. We can't convince Mrs. Johnson. She won't listen to anyone now. Says we're interfering. I really don't know what to do. I am afraid she'll give Richard's wedding house to an outsider." With just a few sentences, she painted me as a confused old lady who had been bewitched by a wild man, emotionally empty, and about to transfer her son's assets to a stranger. Some relatives who didn't know the truth, or who enjoyed spreading gossip, immediately became righteously indignant. They started calling me. "Linda, you need to think clearly. He is your only son. Aren't you afraid your husband won't rest in peace?" The rumors grew more outrageous, even reaching our new community's residents group. Sarah somehow described me to one of the residents as an improper old woman who hooked up with men just years after her husband died and monopolized her son's wedding house for herself. For a while, I felt strange looks throughout the community. Several gossip-loving older women would point and whisper whenever they saw Professor Chen and me walking together. I was furious, but I knew I couldn't engage in arguments with them in the group chats. That would be too undignified and would only trap me in the same mud they wallowed in, playing right into Sarah's hands. I calmed down. Anger wouldn't solve the problem, but the law could. I quietly began collecting evidence, chat records from the relatives group, which my sister screenshotted and sent to me calls from relatives, trying to persuade me, which I recorded. The nasty comments in the residents group, for which I had the property manager help preserve evidence. I even found the resident who had initially spread rumors in the community group. She was just a girl in her 20s who, when I confronted her, was frightened by a few words and confessed everything about how Sarah had embellished the story. She was willing to testify for me. Everything was ready. I didn't confront Sarah or argue with those relatives. I hired the city's best lawyer. A lawyer's letter was sent in my name to Sarah's company and to the homes of several relatives who had spread the most vicious rumors. The letter clearly demanded they immediately stop violating my reputation rights and issue written public apologies within 1 week on the relevant platforms where they had spread rumors. Otherwise, I would formally file a defamation lawsuit in court. When Sarah received the lawyer's letter, she was reportedly in her company's break room bragging to colleagues about how she had handled her future mother-in-law. When the company's legal department handed her the lawyer's letter, she was completely stunned, especially when she realized the letter had been sent to her company and the legal department was now involved. She panicked completely. Her parents were ordinary government employees who valued their reputation above all and feared nothing more than legal troubles. After receiving the call from my lawyer, they were terrified. That very evening, they came to my hotel with fruit baskets, wanting to settle privately. I didn't see them. I had my lawyer handle the negotiations. My demands were simple: public apology and damage control. Finally, under the enormous pressure of potential job consequences and even a criminal record, Sarah surrendered. She posted a long, earnestly worded apology in our hometown relatives group, admitting that all previous statements about me being deceived and transferring assets were malicious fabrications and defamation she had created because of her breakup with Richard. Those gossiping relatives were also thoroughly frightened, privately sending me apologetic messages claiming they had been momentarily confused and misled by trouble. Those gossiping relatives were also thoroughly frightened, privately sending me apologetic messages claiming they had been momentarily confused and misled by troublemakers. I took a screenshot of Sarah's apology letter and posted it on my social media again, this time visible to everyone. The caption read, "The internet is not lawless territory. Words and actions require caution. Thank you to the legal system for restoring my reputation." Below were images of my lawyer's letter and Sarah's apology statement. The world finally became completely quiet. That evening, I stood on my waterfront balcony, pouring myself a glass of red wine, looking down at the city's brilliant lights spreading beneath my feet like a glittering galaxy. I elegantly took a sip. Victory tasted rich and enduring. The lawyer's letter incident became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Richard, seeing Sarah's humiliating and resentful apology letter in the relatives group chat, felt unprecedented shame. He finally understood how ridiculous all his previous communications and confrontations must have appeared to others. He was like a clown being played for a fool. That night, he and Sarah had their most explosive fight ever. He demanded to know why she had spread rumors about me, why she had used such despicable methods. Sarah also broke down completely. She dropped her gentle, sweet mask and shrieked at him hysterically. "Who did I do this for? Wasn't it for us? Otherwise, that house would really be— Do you still want to get married or not? Richard, let me tell you something. I didn't spend all these years with you just to rent apartments and eat instant noodles. If you had any backbone, if you could handle your mother, would I have needed to use these methods? You are just an overgrown mama's boy who never weaned. Loser, a pathetic loser living off others. Each vicious word stabbed into Richard's heart like a knife. Looking at this woman with her twisted features and vicious expression, he felt like he was seeing a complete stranger for the first time. He remembered the contract from when I sold our family home. He remembered my tearful words about planning to live in the maid's room, spoken with such calm disappointment. He remembered my phone call saying, "If you have time to worry about me, think about next month's rent instead." He finally understood completely. Sarah had never loved him as a person. She loved the mama's boy status that could provide her with a $470,000 wedding house that could elevate her status in one leap. And he himself, for this calculating woman, had personally hurt the person who loved him most in the world, who had sacrificed everything for him. Overwhelming regret and shame engulfed him. Looking at Sarah, he calmly proposed breaking up. Sarah was dumbfounded. She probably never imagined that this man she had always controlled would take the initiative to leave. She went from cursing to begging to threatening, but Richard never looked back. He had lost everything. After the breakup, Richard moved out of their shared apartment that cost $5,000 a month in rent. Using the few $1,000s remaining in his account, he rented a small studio in the distant suburbs for $1,500 a month. The room was cramped and damp, with only one tiny window facing another building's wall. For the first time, he truly experienced financial hardship. For the first time, he discovered that even instant noodles in the supermarket came in so many different price ranges. For the first time, late at night, eating cold bread and looking out at that narrow patch of sky, he began missing my lotus root and pork rib soup, missing the spacious, bright, sun-filled courtyard of our old family home. That night, he sent me a message on social media. It came through as a friend request, just 4 words. Mom. No explanations, no excuses, no demands. I saw this message while I was in my art studio, adding color to a sunflower painting. My heart trembled slightly, but I didn't reply. I knew this was just the beginning of his growth. Some paths he had to walk alone. Some bitterness he had to taste completely by himself. I turned off my phone and continued painting my sunflowers. Outside the window, moonlight over the river was cool and bright. In the following days, Richard began his real transformation. He was no longer the spoiled young man who expected everything handed to him. He started working seriously, getting up before dawn every day to take an hour-and-a-half subway ride to work, just to save a few dozen in taxi fare. He no longer bought expensive brand-name shoes and clothes that cost over $100 each. He learned to cook for himself, though initially he always made the rice half raw and overcooked the vegetables until they were old and yellow. Once, he got caught in the rain and developed a high fever late at night. Lying alone in that cold rental room, dizzy and aching all over, he felt helpless and lonely for the first time. Instinctively, he reached for his phone to call me. But when he found my number, he quietly put the phone down again. He knew he had no right now, no right to ask for any care or concern from me. He endured it alone, drinking lots of hot water and sleeping wrapped in blankets. The next day, his fever broke, and he went to work as if nothing had happened. From then on, he started sending me daily messages, not friend requests anymore, but messages sent directly to my phone number. Every single day, I didn't accept his requests, but he didn't seem to care. He simply sent me daily weather reports. Mom, it is getting cold tomorrow. Remember to dress warmly. Or he would send photos of his own cooking, black and unidentifiable dishes. Mom, I tried to make cola chicken wings today. I think I burned them a little. He didn't mention anything else, didn't talk about how hard his life was, didn't ask for forgiveness. He just clumsily, stubbornly shared his daily life. I occasionally looked at those messages. My heart gradually changed from complete indifference to an inexplicable ache. But I still didn't reply. He got his paycheck after taxes and benefits. He took home just over $6,000. After paying rent and utilities and buying necessities for the next month, very little remained. Looking at his pitiful bank balance on his phone, he finally had a concrete and terrifying understanding of what $470,000 really meant. It was an astronomical sum that would take him decades of work to earn, even without eating or drinking. And I had once been ready to give it to him so easily. That weekend, he used money he had saved from his first month's pay to buy me a hand cream from the mall. Nothing fancy, just a tube that cost a few $dozen from the drugstore. He delivered it to my community's front gate, didn't call me, just left it with security to pass along to me. Inside the box was a small card with his crooked handwriting. "Mom, I remember your hands used to be so soft. Now they're rough from housework. I am sorry." When security brought it upstairs, I was wearing reading glasses, studying an art book. I looked at that cheap hand cream next to my $1,000 every pound premium tea. Such a stark contrast. I picked up that card and read those words. My eyes immediately filled with tears. I knew that my son, that boy I had once spoiled, was slowly growing up in his own way. But I still didn't let him come upstairs. Growth required paying a price, and his price was far from paid in full. Just when I thought life would continue peacefully this way, Sarah appeared again. After Richard broke up with her, her life took a nosedive. Without Richard as her long-term meal ticket, she had to move out of that upscale apartment. With her modest salary, she could only share a place with roommates. She probably couldn't accept it. Somehow getting my new address from some relative that afternoon. Professor Chen and I were returning from the community chess room after a game, walking back together. As we reached the building entrance, a figure suddenly rushed out from the nearby landscaping. It was Sarah. She looked even more haggard than before, still wearing full makeup but appearing desperate and overdone. Seeing me, and especially seeing the distinguished Professor Chen beside me, her eyes flashed with jealousy and venom. The next second, she put on an astonishing performance of melodrama. With a thud, she fell straight to her knees in front of me. Her knees hit the concrete with a dull sound. "Mrs. Johnson, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong," she sobbed dramatically, tears streaming down her face as if she had suffered the greatest injustice in the world. "I can't live without Richard. We've been together for so many years. Please give us another chance." Her wailing was loud and piercing, immediately attracting the attention of neighbors passing by. Many stopped to stare and whisper about us. She was clever, using this method, using public pressure, to force me to comply. A future daughter-in-law kneeling on the ground and a cruel mother-in-law standing nearby. This scene was enough to make any uninformed observer think poorly of me. My face darkened, and I was about to speak. But Professor Chen beside me reacted first. He didn't help her up or scold her. He took out his phone and, facing Sarah, said gently, "Miss, your behavior is seriously disturbing my friend. According to Article 42 of the Public Security Administration Punishment Law, you are engaging in harassment. Would you like me to call 911 for you?" Though elderly, his years in academia gave him an authoritative presence. His clear citation of legal statutes and his attitude immediately controlled the situation. Sarah's crying stopped abruptly, as if someone had grabbed her by the throat. She stared at Professor Chen in shock, then at me, her face showing disbelief. She probably never imagined that I, whom she saw as a traditional mother, would have such support from someone who could respond so decisively. I looked at her and finally spoke. My voice was very calm, without any emotion. "First, your relationship with Richard is his decision. I have no right to interfere, nor will I interfere. Second, my house. Please maintain proper boundaries." Sarah's face instantly turned the color of liver. Humiliation, embarrassment, anger, various emotions crossed her features, making her pretty face somewhat distorted. Just then, community security arrived after hearing the commotion. With Professor Chen's explanation, security politely but firmly escorted Sarah, who was still rolling on the ground, away from the premises. The farce ended there. I thanked Professor Chen. He just smiled and adjusted his glasses. Looking at his gentle smile, warmth flowed through my heart. This was how mature adults should treat each other, with mutual respect and protection. He told me about enrolling in the company's skills improvement classes, attending every weekend. He told me about trying new recipes. Though the appearance was still poor, the taste was much improved. He never mentioned money, never mentioned the house, never asked for forgiveness. He was using this clumsy method to prove to me that he was working hard to live, working hard to become better. Through my sister, I learned indirectly that he had taken a more promising sales job. Though demanding, the commission was good. He no longer lived in a dorm but shared a 2-bedroom apartment near his company with a coworker, having his own room. I felt the timing was right. I called him myself. The moment the call connected, we both fell silent. This was the first time in 6 months I had contacted him voluntarily. "Are you free this Sunday?" I broke the silence. "Come over for dinner." On the other end, there was a long, deathly quiet. Then I heard a small, suppressed sob. "I am free." His voice was so hoarse it was unrecognizable. That Sunday he came. He carried a large bag of fresh fruit, standing at my door looking somewhat nervous and uncertain. He was thinner and more tanned, but like a small tree that had been washed by wind and rain, he stood straighter, his eyes more determined than before. He walked into this house he had once lost. I thought he would be envious, jealous, regretful, but he wasn't. He looked around this spacious, bright, elegantly decorated home, his eyes holding no greed, only genuine admiration. "Mom, this place is really beautiful. I am glad you are living well. That puts my mind at ease." These words melted the hardest corner of my heart instantly. At the dinner table, I had prepared a full spread of his favorite dishes: braised pork, sweet and sour ribs, oil-braised prawns. He ate slowly and carefully, as if tasting the most precious thing in the world. Halfway through the meal, his eyes reddened. I pretended not to notice and served him the largest piece of braised pork. "Come back whenever you want to eat this." He nodded and took a big bite of rice, tears finally falling into his bowl. After dinner, I asked about his future plans. He no longer responded with, "I don't know," or "whatever you think," as before. He clearly outlined his career plans and saving strategy. He said he could now save nearly $10,000 each month and wanted to work toward a down payment for his own small place in the suburbs within 2 to 3 years. As he spoke these words, his eyes shone with light. It was a glow I had never seen in him before, the radiance that belongs to a real man. Finally, he looked at me very seriously and said, "Mom, I was wrong before. I always thought what was yours was mine. I took your sacrifices for granted and considered them my natural right. Now I understand that what you can give me is love, not automatic inheritance of assets. My own life is my own responsibility." Hearing these words, I smiled. It was a genuine, heartfelt, happy smile. I stood up and served him another large piece of ribs. "Eat more. Look how thin you've gotten." Family love returned between us in that moment, in a healthier, more mature way. After dinner, I showed Richard around my new home. I took him to see my tea room, my walk-in closet, and finally, my art studio. He looked at the walls covered with my paintings, from early clumsy imitations to my current distinctive style. His eyes filled with admiration and amazement. "Mom, I never knew you painted so well." I smiled and told him I recently partnered with my professor friend to open a small online art store, selling paintings and handicrafts by U.S. retirees. "Business is quite good. You see, I have my own life and career now," I told him. Richard was genuinely happy for me. "Mom, you are amazing." I took out a document I had prepared long ago from my desk and handed it to him. "What is this?" he asked, puzzled. "A financial planning guide I made for you. You are earning well now, but you need to learn to budget. You can't go back to living paycheck to paycheck like before." I patiently taught him about asset allocation, mutual fund investing, making money work for money. I was teaching him how to fish, not simply handing him a fish. Finally, I looked at him seriously and said, "Richard, when you are really ready to marry in the future and need a down payment, Mom can lend you some interest-free startup capital, but we'll need to sign a formal promissory note." Richard was stunned. He looked at my serious expression, then nodded firmly. Yes, he didn't feel I was humiliating him. He understood this was my final test of him and my greatest respect for myself. I was no longer the mother who shielded him from wind and rain, clearing all obstacles from his path. I could and should be someone who could stand beside him as equals, offering guidance and support when needed, a life mentor. When he left, I walked him to the door. He turned around and opened his arms, giving me a clumsy but strong hug. "Mom, thank you." This hug was warmer and more precious than any house worth $470,000. 2 years later, my online gallery was thriving. Professor Chen and I had become indispensable confidants in each other's lives. We traveled to Europe together for painting trips, drinking coffee by the Seine, viewing Michelangelo's David in Florence. My life was prosperous, free, and wonderful. My social media posts no longer featured my son's daily activities, but landscapes from around the world and my own genuine smiles. Richard, through his own efforts and the $30,000 I later loaned him as startup capital, really did buy his own small 2-bedroom place in the suburbs. Though modest, it was his first home earned with his own sweat. He also found a new girlfriend, a nurse who worked at the hospital, a simple, kind girl with dimples when she smiled. The first time he brought her to meet me was at my waterfront penthouse. The girl was a bit nervous, bringing me homemade cookies and shyly calling me Mrs. Johnson. He looked at me with eyes full of mature love and gratitude. Watching them, I saw them as any ordinary happy young couple. I no longer felt the anxiety and scrutiny of becoming a mother-in-law. I was simply a mother genuinely happy for her son's happiness. As for Sarah, I occasionally heard news about her later. She hastily married a local man of average means. After marriage, they argued constantly over daily expenses and mortgage payments, having long lost her former glamour. I heard that once she encountered Richard and his new girlfriend at a shopping mall. Seeing their happiness, she stood alone in the same spot for a long time. But those were stories that no longer concerned me. I stood on my waterfront balcony as the evening breeze caressed my face, with the city's thousands of lights spread beneath my feet like a brilliant galaxy. My phone lit up with a message from Richard. "Mom, the weather forecast says it is getting cold again tomorrow. Remember to dress warmly when you go out so you don't catch cold." I smiled and replied, "You too." This kind of love, with distance, respect, and care, but without mutual bondage. Subscribe for more captivating stories like this, and don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for being here with us. See you next time.